Here it is, I guess Friday morning, which means I get to go dancing tonight. Failed to go shopping, failed to do any of the stuff I wanted to do, didn't get to playing this. The reason, Raid had an event that I had decided to skip, but then got sold on. I really wanted the reward for it. And somebody showed me how I could do it on a video without breaking my account. So I kind of settled down and spent the day doing that. Well, it's something like 16 hours of play, essentially, because of the way I did it and what resources I had available. But I wanted to touch on the scenarios for this game. And I've looked them over, and I just can't convince myself I want to play them. They don't feel different enough to sell me on them being particularly intriguing here. So first of all, the first one we have is this Nation in Crisis, a tournament game. It's got a different deck, a smaller deck, but the purpose of this is to create a very tense and kind of balanced, quick playing scenario. It's got no historical value at all, less perhaps than the main game. No additional historical value, let's say that. You know, obviously, it's intended for short competitive play at, say, an event or something like that. And not very exciting to me. So this one was going to get skipped no matter what. But let's take a look at some of the others. The home rule for Ireland. So what changes in this? Not a whole hell of a lot. The flow of the game and the victory conditions change. It's a two-player only game. And the setup's a little different, whatever. Among other things, you don't get random leaders. You get Gladstone and Disraeli. A slight change in the rules for selecting bills, which is that the Prime Minister basically gets to select 6 bills and choose them. He's got 3 additional home rule bills that he needs to pass, and he needs to get it done by the end of the 3rd round of the game. That's basically before there's an election, right? And then you do that final election afterwards. Anyway, not terribly exciting from my point of view. Now here, this is weird. Oh, no. No, it doesn't go just 3 rounds. Gladstone wins if he becomes Prime Minister at the end of round 3, but he's got longer term objectives that he can do. And Disraeli wins if he holds the Prime Ministership. So the situation's set up so Gladstone has an advantage. So it's not as short as I thought. And they're saying about 9 rounds, 45 to 60 minutes. It's going to be a shorter game. I was tempted to play this, but it just doesn't do all that much. There are some adjustments here. In selecting bills placed on the board, he can choose any of the bills he draws or from the Irish agenda. There may be some special effects to the Irish agenda, but I don't think so. A few cards are, so the 3 cards are removed from the Liberal bills and played, placed where they're available at all times. That's basically the only thing, is I have a few extra bills that I really want to select as Gladstone, and otherwise it's the same basic game. Next one is the Queen's Favour. Earl of Aberdeen and Earl of Rosebery are the leaders of the 2 parties, and they're both favorites of the Queen. So it's going to be a 2-player game. Setup's a little different. The Windsor Castle Act and the Royal Titles and Treason Act are placed face up next to the board. Those are going to be the Queen's bills, kind of like the Irish bills before. When selecting, the PM can choose among the bills he drew and the two proposed by the opposition leader, or any of the Queen's bills that haven't been passed already. This is kind of like the Irish. You get 10 victory points instead of any other effect for passing a Queen's bill. Each time you spend an action cube on flatter, you get more victory points. The goal is the standard. If you take a Queen's bill, you have to succeed in passing it. If you withdraw it or fail, you just lose the game. Doesn't say the other person wins, but unlike what I just played, most games kind of have the assumption if you lose, the other guy wins. If you select an option with negative favor points when resolving an event, you immediately lose the game. So there's a few things you can't do. But again, it sounds like, you know, if you're really into the game and you have two players, both of those sound like interesting little tiny twists on it. But it's like using different boards for Steam or something like that. It's not that big a deal. Here's one, repealing the corn laws. I think this is price controls that support the farmers, but the farmers are not really in need of that support. However, getting rid of these has been kind of a third rail in politics up to this point. This can go up two or four players. Specific politicians are used. You don't track victory points. You're going to, I don't remember this. You're going to place a spare player marker in the 6th position on the score track. The Importation Act is going to be taken out of the bills and put available. The thing that bothers me about this is it's never like giving you slices of time. It's never time. None of these are timing the whole thing. So you've got the whole game, the whole event deck, not stacked or anything like that. And it's covering a long period, which is why there's so many different politicians. They're each prime ministers. In 4-player games, each player plays as a team for joint victory. Okay, so you don't have the kind of competition that you have in the base game, which I kind of like. The government backbencher may not resign during bill selection. The PM draws bills indicated on the score track. And other players do not draw or propose bills, and he selects the bills to place by choosing among the bills he randomly chose or the Importation Act. When the marker on the score track is in the 2 position, he must place the 2 bills randomly drawn, and he has to put 3 bills up, so the Importation Act is also forced at that point. Basically, each turn, each time you select bills, the score track goes down 1, which is just sort of a forcing you to have less and less good choices. If the marker on the score track reaches 2, the PM draws a couple supporter cards, keeping them face down, giving them more of a and places them underneath the Importation Act. I believe that's people who are going to support that act. If you pass the party bill, other than importation, apply the effects on the card other than the victory points, and then immediately draw additional supporter cards according to the victory point values. So your victory points are going to give you more and more of these. I think the goal of the game is to pass the Importation Act and then win the following election. If you can't hold the election, if you can't hold the government after passing the act, your government has failed due to it. It's fallen apart due to passing this unpopular act. The opposition wins if the act is failed or withdrawn. If it's on the board and the PM loses a challenge, i.e. if you can take the ministry, or the PM loses the election after passing the Importation Act. So opposition has a lot of opportunities. Yeah, you draw supporters based on the number of points that you get. And you get your normal supporters as well. If a conservative PM selects the Importation Act, it's treated as a moderate bill, a plus 40. If it passes, you reverse the popularity, etc. audit. If the Importation Act passes under any case, you reveal the cards that were placed under it and can play them now to impact your chances on the next election, and then you immediately hold an election. No, we had the PM loses an election after passing the Importation Act. No. Oh, yes. If you bring the... Okay, so this is the thing. If the Importation Act is brought on the board as a bill that's trying to be passed and you lose a challenge, so if in your attempt to bring it to the vote, you lose the prime ministry, that's when you lose the game. Okay. And again, you know, it's kind of an interesting mechanism, but it's like, do I really want to play through this entire thing again just to get this little fiddling with this one card? Yeah, it's not enough of a change to drive me. Second Reform Act. You have fixed people. These give you, I'm getting this one confused with the next one, or not the next one, but the Liberal Unionist. This is 2 to 4 players, assigned Salisbury and Gladstone, playing with 3 Rosebery and Disraeli. Okay, so those are the backbenchers. A couple of cards are removed from the game. From the Liberal bills, I believe, let's look at the victory conditions here. Well, I can't find them. I remembered reading this one. Not sure I see victory conditions. Very interesting. I think this is just a set of adjustments to the base game. So the PM can select the act, which is either the representation of the peace, it's the Representation of the People's Act. The rioting in the East End is going to be caused by how the act is dealt with. Follow usual bill selection, except the PM can select the act during any bill selection. If it's selected by a conservative PM, treat it as an M bill. So in a way, this is like dealing with the kinds of events that I want it to be tracked throughout the game. But it's like one event, you know. It just feels so limited compared to the kind of thing I wanted. If the act has not been introduced, and it may be, you know, the mechanism, you would have to add major mechanisms. Look at all the rules that are involved to create just a single card that has to be dealt with, right? And that's their choice in how to deal with these, is to make it scenarios that deal with a single card and then have a lot of different effects to it. So if the act hasn't been introduced and the riots aren't on the board, the riots get shuffled into the top of the event deck, the top 5 cards or so, and then whatever they are, and we'll take a look at them because I need to swap batteries, so I'm going to have to patch this video together. I wasn't expecting to do that. Here's the rioting in the East End, and I don't know that I'm seeing this as terribly, you know, different. All the rest of the cards are very much of this nature, so like putting this in each time, okay, look, it affects gentry and middle class. If you ignore it, you could decrease the you could call in the army for 1 cube. It decreases workers. You make a personal visit. It increases workers. So you know you get, and it's one of the reasons. Like I didn't go through many of the events, so wow, there's a whole bunch of events that could come up and whatever. But they're almost all the same kind of things. There's the by-elections. There's these kind of cards. There's nothing additional. There's nothing that I saw that does anything really funky. They're all these, yeah, you know, you could pay a cost in cubes or pay a cost in popularity. and or standing and royal favor and stuff like that. It's a nice little mechanism, but it's not something you base your game off of that rioting is going to happen. It's just not that impressive. The effect, it's not that devastating a card. It's a painful card. It's worse than, say, Derby Day, okay? But not by much. Like, if you pay nothing, well, you take one additional popularity hit. It's basically a one worse card, and, you know, it costs an extra cube to get the good effect. Yeah, there's only 2 effects on the Derby Day. It's a particularly light card. Yeah, so it's one of the heavier cards. Most of the cards are of that nature. I don't know. Anyway, what do we got here? So if you draw the riots while the act is on the board, i.e. you're presenting it as a bill, you return the riots and place it next to the game board without effect and draw another event. You're doing something about the problem so you don't suffer the horrible effect of that card, which is just not that different from, you know, it's about as bad as they get, but there are a lot that are as bad as they get. So, you know, whatever. The positive effect printed on the card is canceled. Oh, I'm sorry. If the PM draws the riots when the act is not on the board, adjust the effects. Okay, they make it worse. The negative effects are doubled. Yeah, this is pretty bad then. Basically what it means is you have to spend the cubes. The positive effect is canceled. Spending 2 action cubes only avoids the negative effects. And after resolving the riots, return the riots card to its place next to the game board so it's available the next time bill selection is done. And again, if you select the special act that this scenario is about, that card doesn't go into the top of the deck. If you don't select it, it goes into the top of the deck. If the act fails or withdrawn, return it face up next to the board where you can pull it again. If it passes, if it's passed by the conservative PM, reverse the effects stated on the card. The Liberals gain a popularity step in the Gentry sector. The Conservatives lose 1 in the Conservative sector and score 6 victory points. In addition to those effects stated on the card, the government party wins 1 popularity step in the Workers section, while the opposition loses 1 in the Workers section. Except for partisan points, all numerical values in the Workers section are immediately doubled and remain doubled for the remainder of the game once you pass it. So again, it's an important thing to pass. It gives you a powerful position. Essentially what you're doing is you're giving the workers the vote. And it gives you a huge advantage in terms of total popularity because of that. If you're the leader of the party that passed the act, you can spend 1 action cube per round to hurt the workers of your opponent. If you're performing the action as the opposition leader, you may save 1 of your action cubes at the end of your action turn, then use it to perform this action after the PM's turn is complete and immediately before bill resolution. Why would that matter? Not really sure. Like, I could see keeping them at as low as possible after the PM's turn is complete. That's not that big a deal, but I could see it having some effect. I don't really see the before bill resolution as being terribly important because I don't know. Remove the riots card from the game when it's played. If it's already in the events deck, reveal cards needed in order to find it, then reshuffle. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting little thing, but again, you're still playing this same core game, and I don't know, you could make the same argument with something like Empires of the Middle Ages, right? It's the same core game, you're playing on all of them. Well, I don't tend to play the scenarios, I tend to play the campaign because that exposes the most, but I would play the scenarios mainly based on player count and time that I have available. Fractured Parliament, all this does is makes it harder to pass any bills as the government. There are a bunch of extra seats that neither player can have when they hold the government. Again, interesting? Sure. The Liberal Unionists. This adds a third player, the Duke of Devonshire, who is a supporter, actually. And you'll use 3 fixed people again. These all use... This one does not use fixed characters. The others, I think, all do. Even the tournament one, right? Maybe not. Yep, the tournament one does too, to provide a more balanced game, perhaps. You don't use 3-party adjustments. Okay, so Devonshire has like multiple things he can do. He starts out as a liberal backbencher, and he can switch to being a conservative backbencher or become a third party. So he has a lot of extra power in this game. When he's an independent liberal unionist backbencher, he's still a backbencher. He's neither going to be the prime minister nor hold the majority of the opposition. He holds the pact card and no one uses the deputy party. Basically, his mechanisms are handled by giving him party leadership cards depending on what he's doing. And giving him capabilities, that other politicians wouldn't necessarily have. We get rid of some of the normal mechanisms in the game. Okay, a whole bunch of stuff here. So this is about what to do about Ireland, okay? And Devonshire is interested in the Irish Coercion Act. Gladstone wants to do the Government of Ireland Act, and Salisbury wants to do the Party Processions Act. And that's sort of their goal throughout. If Gladstone or Salisbury is Prime Minister, they're able to pull that extra act, which is going to be set aside, as they were elsewhere. However, Devonshire is able to put the Irish Coercion Act on the table. I think only if he's conservative. I'm looking to see what his... If Devonshire places, yeah, I don't know where it says. Yeah, here's rules adjustments for Devonshire. You can never challenge the party leader. Your action cubes are always 2. You can perform debate and hobnob on your backbencher card. Once per turn, you can spend a cube to perform the campaign action on your Devonshire card. As a liberal backbencher, he takes his turn after Gladstone. Cannot debate against the government bill, but he's free to use supporter debate actions as you wish. Okay, this leads me to an interesting question. Those are not debate actions, is how I read it. Now they're calling them that here, and I'm beginning to think that maybe in my playthrough, you couldn't use your supporters to oppose bills, which was a powerful reason why people were doing hobnobbing, because they couldn't actually directly oppose the bill, but it made sense that they could use a supporter to do sort of a proxy war against bills. There's nothing in the basic rules that says otherwise, or that says anything like this. But the fact that this had to be stated here, you're free to use supporter debate actions as you wish, makes me wonder, is that a new rule? Is that new to this scenario? And normally you can't. Not stated in the rules. You may use influence actions to change government MPs from moderates to parliament or vice versa without the PM's permission. You pull your victory points with Gladstone. Favor or standing effects have a pointing finger on them no matter what, because you will not be tracking that. You're not a normal player. In place of standard resignation, you can leave the Liberal Party. Once you leave the Liberal Party, you can never rejoin it. If you're an independent Liberal Unionist, If you have less than 90 victory points, you can leave the Liberal Party and form your own party. You'll spend action cubes. Take the pact card from Gladstone, which doesn't really mean anything. You take some standing from him, you get some victory points. You're no longer chief whip. You can use either side of the opposition leader debate card, so you can vote for or against bills. Deputy party leader career card from Salisbury and set it aside. I don't know. You might be getting that when you switch over. You take your turn last after the prime minister, so he gets to do his event, and you're able to come in after that and affect things. One of the powers of the prime minister is being able to go last and affect things more. So that gives him a little bonus. He's kind of the Saruman player. During the bill selection, you draw 4 bills and propose 2, while the opposition leader draws 2 and proposes 1. Everything's got pointy fingers. You get your victory points from cross-party bills, your debate card, and your bill selection bonus. Now, you could also become a conservative backbencher. After you've become the liberal unionist, you can choose to join the government or opposition in the Conservatives, and it weakens you to 1 cube. Salisbury gets a bonus. You reset your victory points. Your current victory points are 5 more than Salisbury, whichever is less. After resetting your victory points, deduct 6 from your score if Salisbury had already passed party procession, which is, again, what he wants to do. Set aside your opposition leader debate card. You can now use the appropriate chief whip card again. And the activated party leader career card goes to Gladstone, the deputy party leader. Yeah, and it's weird because the party leaders are holding offices that give them additional capabilities. You take your turn after Salisbury. You cannot use your debate actions against government bills when he's PM, but you can use supporter debate actions as you wish. Again, those weren't defined as debate actions. The way the actual rules wording goes is these act like in certain ways or something like that. I am not going to hunt this down, but I remember looking, when I saw this, I went and looked it up, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fuzzy what they talk about. They have their own rules, and, you know, to me, it just, the effect is like it. You may use influence actions to change government MPs from moderates to partisans. Okay. You pool victory points with Salisbury, except if the Irish Coercion Act gets points, you get the only points, and only Salisbury gets the Party Processions Act. All points have a pointy finger. When you're Conservative government, you may spend 2 cubes to remove from the board any bill other than the Party Processions. I think you only have 1 cube. No, it costs you a cube to switch actions, okay, or to switch parties. Okay, so when you do, right, so when you're in the Conservative, you can spend 2 action cubes to remove any bill from the board other than the Party Processions and replace it with the Irish Coercion Act. So you can force the one bill that you care about to get on the board. And that'll have a projection of plus 100. It's very popular. If Irish coercion fails or is withdrawn, you return it face up next to your player mat where it remains available for selection again. This is the only way you're allowed to introduce it. You can't do it during bill selection. You can never leave the Conservatives after joining. And Devonshire's victory conditions are to reach 100 VP as an independent liberal unionist or as a liberal or conservative backbencher in government. I don't know what the underline is. So there's no commas in here to help, or parentheses or anything. So I'm putting it as the or is underlined and the government is underlined. So 100 victory points as anything other than a conservative, 100 as a conservative if the Conservatives hold the government. That's how I would read it. Gladstone and Salisbury, but they're using that notation as maybe some sort of hint, and maybe I got it, maybe I got it wrong. I'm not sure. it's the only thing that I can. If these weren't underlined, I would have absolutely no idea what to do about it. I think I would still have to do it the same way, for the simple fact that independent liberal unionists could not be in government. Therefore, the ors become separations anyway. The fact that they underlined them, I think, just highlights that, but it's a pretty weak way of stating that, especially when they've got some blank space here. Gladstone and Salisbury reach 100 victory points as PM. That's how they win. If Devonshire and the current PM meet the victory offers simultaneously, Devonshire wins the tie. And he probably has done his coercion act. So that is the last of them. And again, you know, it sounds kind of interesting, that three-player dynamic and everything. That one actually sounds the most interesting. It's also the most complicated of them, with him bopping between parties. I don't think it's exciting enough, simply because it's the same components doing the same stuff. You could make the same argument, again, with the Empires of the Middle Ages. I'm just flipping over the same action cards, the same events are in there and everything. It's all very abstract. To me, the difference there is that there's a board, I guess, with lasting effects on the board. Here, the only lasting effects is what groups are you popular with. And that's tough for me, you know. I pushed myself and did several games of Road to the White House over the years, to try to run a continuation. But in those cases, it was to run a continuation of a campaign, right? Like, we'd have one campaign, then we'd run the presidency, then I'd go and, you know, run something else as a follow-up on it, the same way that I did with Mr. President, and I made my own special rules for incumbents and whatnot, just to be able to see what happens. Anyway, but that's the only way that I ever did that, as like, oh, I want to play another one right away, right? So anyway, I'm not gonna do them. I've read the rules to another game and was debating doing them. I might have come up here and played this had I not been playing so much Raid. Another little note about my life, well, not my life, but about gaming type stuff. If you recall, Clash of Sovereigns was a real cock-up by GMT. Bob Kolinkowski reached out to me privately and gave me some of his insight about what happened. And needless to say, from his point of view, my guesses are about, like, scaring away the developers or something. Do not match with his own opinion of it. I'm not going to go into what his opinion is, because he did reach out privately, but he did put quite a bit of the information that he shared with me in a thread on BGG, so that's fine. And yeah, I mean, you know, there's sort of a who's to say what about what. The fact of the matter is, there were a large number of developers and a very small number of playtesters listed. That's a sign that something's going wrong. And, you know, where you want to point fingers or whatever, I at least was right about one thing, you know, and he had made this clear in some of his other posts, not directly stating it, but it was obvious. You know, he's an older guy and has been working on this game for a long, long time. And this was kind of the way to get it out the door. And it wasn't ready, is my feeling. It didn't, but, you know, he doesn't feel like it was him pushing back on suggestions. He feels it was more to do with an avoid. He doesn't, I don't want to go too far into it, but basically not enough playtesting was done, and he doesn't feel that, you know, he agrees there, and that it was not his doing that there was not enough playtesting. And I'll leave it at that and let him explain in the thread that he had anything further. Anyway, I guess I'll come up and do a review of this. I don't know. Yeah, it feels kind of weird because like I should have done the review right after I played it. Now I'm like a little bit fuzzy on it. The memories are already beginning to fade. And I played something else in between, but I really don't want to go back and deal with it again. Okay, up it goes.